The mirror shattered before the scream even finished echoing. Crimson streaked across the glass, dripping down in slow, deliberate lines. Not splattered, not chaotic. Written. A name carved into the reflection in trembling script. Aurelia. But Aurelia was standing right there. The torches in the chamber flickered violently, shadows twisting like living things along the stone walls. Outside, the palace bells began ringing. Not the warning bells for invasion, the betrayal bells. The kind that only rang when blood had been spilled by someone trusted. Aurelia stepped closer to the mirror. Her reflection didn't move. It smiled. Behind her, steel clashed against steel. A scream. Then another. The royal guard, sworn to protect her, were fighting each other. And then she heard it. A whisper, soft, familiar, intimate. "You chose the wrong side." The words weren't spoken in the room. They were inside her head. Aurelia's hand trembled as black veins began creeping up her wrist. The ancient mark of Vera, a curse that only activates when a ruler betrays their oath. But Aurelia had never betrayed anyone. Right? From the balcony, a figure in a dark cloak watched the chaos unfold. And when the palace doors exploded inward with magic, Aurelia realized the war hadn't just begun. It had been waiting for her. Long before the mirror bled her name, before the palace bells rang in accusation, Aurelia Valenne had been the kingdom's miracle child. She was born during the eclipse winter, a season so cold the rivers froze solid and the sun vanished for 9 days. The royal priests claimed her survival was prophecy. The villagers whispered it was a warning. Her mother, Queen Seraphine, kept a journal hidden beneath the marble tiles of her chambers. Years later, Aurelia would find it. Ink faded, pages brittle. One entry stood out. "If the mark ever appears on her skin, it will not mean she betrayed us. It will mean we failed her." Aurelia never understood what that meant. Her father, King Theron, ruled with iron discipline and silver-tongued diplomacy. He raised Aurelia not like a daughter, but like a weapon sharpened for a throne soaked in quiet enemies. She learned ancient languages before she learned lullabies. She studied war strategy before she ever attended a ball. But there was one rule above all others. Never trust the Council of Vera. The Council, cloaked figures who governed magic across the realm, were older than the monarchy itself. They claimed neutrality. They claimed balance. They claimed they did not interfere in mortal politics. They lied. Aurelia learned that the hard way when she was 16. That was the year Cale returned. Cale Ardent, son of a disgraced general, executed for treason. Exiled at 12. Silent for years. Until one summer evening, when he reappeared in the capital, taller, sharper, eyes holding storms. He didn't kneel when he saw her. He smirked. "You look smaller than the throne makes you." She should have had him arrested. Instead, she laughed. Kyle was rebellion wrapped in charm. Where Aurelia was controlled, he was wildfire. Where she calculated, he felt. And somewhere between stolen glances at war councils and whispered arguments in candlelit corridors, something dangerous grew between them. The kingdom noticed. The council noticed more. This because Cale carried something hidden beneath his collarbone. A faint sigil that glowed when magic surged nearby. A forbidden brand known as the Sigil of Vera. It marked those touched directly by the council's power. Aurelia confronted him once. "Were you recruited?" Kyle's jaw tightened. "I was chosen." "Chosen for what?" "To survive." He never explained further. Meanwhile, the kingdom simmered with unrest. Taxes had risen after border skirmishes. Crops were failing in the south. Whispers began circulating in taverns. They say the princess meets with the son of a traitor. They say the council visits the palace at night. They say Queen Seraphine died screaming. That last one wasn't rumor. Aurelia was 13 when her mother collapsed during a private audience with the council. No poison was found. No blade was drawn. Just a faint black mark blooming across her wrist before her heart stopped. The same mark now crawling up Aurelia's own skin. The official story was illness, but Aurelia remembered her mother's last words. Do not let them corner you. Corner you. That word echoed now in the shattered mirror chamber. Years passed. King Theron grew distant. Meetings behind sealed doors became more frequent. Aurelia was gradually handed more authority, more public responsibility, as if the throne was being transferred before death required it. And then there was Lyra, Lady Lyra of House Marin, Aurelia's closest confidant. Orphaned young, raised at court, sharp-minded, soft-spoken, observant to a fault. Lyra had a habit of collecting things people said in passing, storing them like weapons in velvet boxes. She once told Aurelia quietly, "Everyone serves something, even those who claim they serve only you." Aurelia trusted her completely, perhaps too completely, because behind the palace walls, alliances were shifting. The Council of Vera had begun summoning nobles privately. Several houses pledged loyalty not to the crown, but to the balance. Kyle warned her. They're positioning you. For what? For blame. Aurelia refused to believe it. The council had always operated in shadows, yes, but they preserved magic. They maintained stability. They weren't villains. Right? Then came the prophecy. It surfaced in an old monastery near the northern cliffs. A monk, half mad and frostbitten, arrived at the capital clutching a burned scroll. It read, "When the mark awakens on royal skin, the throne shall crack from within. The queen shall bleed without a blade, and love will crown the masquerade." Love will crown the masquerade. Kale dismissed it as fear-mongering. Lyra didn't. And King Theron? He burned the scroll publicly. But Aurelia saw something in his eyes that night. Fear. And now, as black veins crept along her arm and her reflection smiled without her consent, every piece of her past felt less like coincidence and more like orchestration. The rivalry between crown and council, the execution of Kale's father, her mother's mysterious death, the prophecy, the whispers, the positioning. It had never been random. It had been a slow tightening of a noose, and someone very close to her, had been pulling it. The palace doors did not merely open. They exploded inward. A surge of blue-white magic tore through the grand hall, shattering stained glass and hurling royal guards across marble floors like discarded dolls. Smoke coiled upward, thick with the metallic scent of blood and burning sigils. Aurelia stood frozen beneath the chandelier as chaos erupted around her. "Stand down!" she shouted. No one listened, because the royal guard was no longer fighting invaders. They were fighting each other. Steel clashed in frantic confusion. Men who had trained side by side for decades now moved like strangers under a spell. Eyes glazed, veins darkened. The mark, the same black veins crawling up Aurelia's wrist, flickered faintly across several of them. This wasn't a coup. It was activation. And then they entered. The Council of Vera. 7 cloaked figures glided through the smoke, untouched by falling debris. Their masks gleamed, bone-white, expressionless, ancient. The High Speaker stepped forward. "It has begun." Aurelia felt heat rise behind her eyes. "Call off your spell." "This is not our spell," the speaker replied calmly. "This is yours." Aurelia's heart slammed against her ribs. "You carry the mark," another counselor said. "You have triggered the covenant." "I did nothing." "Exactly." The chamber fell silent. The High Speaker raised a gloved hand, and with a subtle twist of air, the mirror from her chambers floated into the hall. Cracked, blood-streaked, her name carved across it. A ruler marked by Vera is either chosen or guilty. Of what? Aurelia demanded. But before they could answer, a body slid across the marble floor. Lyra. Her silver gown was torn, blood soaked through her sleeve. A dagger protruded from beneath her ribs. Aurelia dropped to her knees beside her. No. No, no, no. Lyra's fingers gripped her wrist weakly, right over the mark. "They moved faster than we thought," she whispered. Who? Who moved? Aurelia demanded. Lyra's eyes flicked toward the council, and then toward Kyle. Kyle stood at the far end of the hall, sword drawn, chest heaving, eyes locked on Aurelia. For one suspended, suffocating second, he didn't look shocked, he looked prepared. "Tell me," Aurelia begged Lyra. Lyra's lips trembled. "Don't trust." Her body went limp. Aurelia screamed. The sound cracked something ancient in the air. The mark on her arm flared black. Magic pulsed outward in a violent wave, slamming every guard, every council member, every shattered fragment of glass against the walls. Candles extinguished. Torches burst. Silence fell. And in that silence, Kale stepped forward. "Stand down," he said to the council. They did. Aurelia's world tilted. "Why did they listen to you?" she whispered. Kale didn't answer immediately. Instead, he removed his collar. The faint sigil beneath his collarbone ignited, not faint anymore. Not subtle. It burned with the same black light crawling through her veins. "You said you were chosen," Aurelia breathed. "I was," he said quietly. "For what?" "For this." The council's high speaker bowed, not to Aurelia, to Kale. "The heir of Vera," the speaker declared. The words detonated in Aurelia's chest. "Heir?" she echoed. Kale's jaw tightened. Pain flickered across his face. Real pain. "My father wasn't executed for treason," he said. "He was executed because he refused to give me to them." "To who?" she demanded, though she already knew. "The council." The high speaker's voice cut in smoothly. "The covenant binds royal blood to Vera's heir. It always has." Aurelia staggered to her feet. "What covenant?" The counselor closest to her spoke like a historian reciting law. "Centuries ago, when magic first fractured the realm, the monarchy and Vera struck a pact. One bloodline would rule by crown, the other would rule by shadow. Every generation, the royal heir must bind to Vera's heir. Through loyalty, through union, through love." Aurelia's stomach dropped. "No." "Yes," Cal whispered. "Love will crown the masquerade," she murmured. The prophecy. It wasn't metaphor, it was contract. "You brought me back into her life intentionally," Aurelia said, voice hollow. Kale's silence was confirmation. "I didn't know at first," he insisted. "Not fully. They told me proximity would stabilize the mark, that you were destined to awaken it." "And Lyra?" Aurelia demanded, rage breaking through grief. "Was that part of your proximity?" Kale flinched. "She wasn't supposed to die." The high speaker interjected, cold and clinical. Her interference accelerated the awakening. She discovered the covenant. Aurelia's vision blurred red. "You killed her." "We corrected an imbalance." Aurelia lunged forward, but Kale caught her wrists. "Stop!" he hissed. "If you attack them now, the covenant seals permanently." "Let me go. If you sever the bond violently, you die." The hall spun. "This is madness." "No," the speaker replied. "This is inheritance." Aurelia looked at Kyle. "You used me." His grip loosened. "I fell in love with you," he said, voice breaking. "So, that was not part of the plan." The council shifted uneasily. Love was not something they controlled. And that was the first crack in their composure. Aurelia pulled free. "So the mark activates when I betray my oath?" "Yes," the speaker said, "but I didn't betray anyone." A pause. Then the speaker said softly, "You considered refusing the covenant." The words hit harder than any blade. In the quiet corners of her heart, she had. She had imagined ruling without shadow oversight, without council interference, without binding herself to a power she didn't choose. That thought alone was treason. The covenant didn't require action, it required loyalty. Complete. And Aurelia had doubted. The mark wasn't punishment, it was surveillance. Kyle stepped closer. "If we complete the bond willingly, you keep the throne. We balance power together. They can't control us both." And if I refuse? The High Speaker answered this time. Then Vera reclaims what is owed. The marble beneath Aurelia's feet cracked. Reclaims how? The speaker's voice lowered. By removing the crown. The guards behind the council drew their blades again, not against her enemies, against her. And that was the first shocking twist. The villain was not a foreign invader, not a rival kingdom, not even the council alone. The villain was the system binding her life to a contract written before she was born. And the man she loved was the key to locking it. Kyle reached for her hand. We can outplay them. Or I can end this, she whispered. How? She looked at the shattered mirror, now lying in fragments across the hall. Her reflection stared back from every broken piece, smiling. And suddenly, she understood something terrifying. The covenant bound royal blood to Vera's heir, but it never specified which royal bloodline. Her father was still alive. King Theron had always feared something, burned the prophecy, accelerated her rule, met privately with the council. What if he wasn't preparing her to inherit? What if he was preparing her to replace? Aurelia lifted her gaze slowly to the High Speaker. You said every generation binds the heirs. Yes. And if the reigning monarch refuses? The speaker's silence stretched. Cale's face drained of color. Aurelia, he breathed, because she had just realized something catastrophic. The covenant didn't activate because she doubted it. It activated because someone else had already broken it. Her father. And if that was true, then the betrayal didn't start with her. It started with the king, and the war unfolding in the palace was never meant for her at all. It was meant to finish him, and the council had just played them both. The bells did not stop ringing, not after Lyra's body was carried away, not after the council retreated into the smoke, not even after the fires were contained. They rang because the kingdom could feel it. Something sacred had fractured. By dawn, the city of Valeris was already whispering. At the taverns near the eastern gate, merchants leaned across ale-stained tables. They say the princess killed her closest friend. They say the mark means she tried to overthrow the king. They say the council has chosen a new ruler. Rumors moved faster than truth. And then the scrolls began arriving. Black wax, no crest, no signature. Delivered to nobles, guild leaders, or commanders. Each scroll carried the same chilling message. The crown has betrayed the covenant. Choose your allegiance before the second moon rises. Panic rippled through the court. Half the nobles sealed their gates. The other half requested private audiences with the council. Aurelia stood on the balcony overlooking the capital as smoke from the palace still curled into the sky. Behind her, Cale paced. They're forcing division, he said. If the house is split, the covenant stabilizes through chaos. You speak as if you're not one of them, Aurelia replied coldly. Cale stopped. I am not their soldier. You bowed to them. I was buying time. For who? Me? Or the heir they raised you to be? The tension between them was no longer romantic. It was volatile. Before he could answer, a servant burst into the chamber, pale and shaking. Your highness, the king requests your presence in the Undercroft. The Undercroft, the forbidden level beneath the throne room, where relics of ancient magic were stored, where Queen Seraphine collapsed. Aurelia descended alone. The air below was colder, thicker, humming faintly with suppressed power. King Theron stood beside a circular stone altar etched with glowing runes. He looked older than she remembered, smaller. You know, he said without turning. The Covenant, she answered. He nodded. They've told you enough to scare you, not enough to free you. Aurelia stepped closer. You broke it. Theron finally faced her. I delayed it. For years. I tried to. The runes flared faintly as he placed his palm against the altar. A projection shimmered above it. An image of a binding ritual. A royal figure kneeling. A Varen heir standing opposite. Energy threading between them like chains made of light. I refuse to bind your mother, Theron said. Aurelia froze. What? They wanted the ritual completed before you were born. I refused. I thought I could protect her. Protect you. And she died. Yes. The word landed like a stone. The council doesn't need swords, he continued. They apply pressure, illness, accidents, political ruin. They corner you until binding feels like mercy. Cornered. The same word Lyra had whispered. So you delayed the covenant, Aurelia said slowly, and now they're forcing it through me. Theron's jaw tightened. They can't take the throne directly. The covenant requires royal consent. If you refuse willingly, it destabilizes magic across the realm. And if I refuse publicly, they will paint you as unstable. He dangerous, marked by corruption. Aurelia let out a hollow laugh. They already have. Suddenly, the runes shifted. The projection changed. Instead of the binding ritual, a new image formed, one that made Aurelia's blood run cold. Kyle, kneeling before the council. Months ago, before returning to the capital, her breath stopped. You knew, she whispered. Theron didn't answer. You knew who he was before he came back. Yes, and you let him near me. I needed to see if the bond would trigger. Rage ignited through her veins. You used me as bait. I was trying to understand their timeline. You were gambling with my life. Theron's composure cracked. I was gambling with the kingdom. Silence crushed the chamber. Aurelia stepped back, heart pounding. So this entire time, she said slowly, you were monitoring him. Monitoring us. Yes. And you didn't tell me. If I told you, you would have chosen him. The truth was a blade. Because he was right, she would have. A tremor shook the undercroft. The altar's runes flickered violently. Then a new voice echoed through the chamber. Not the council, not Theron, not Kyle, but something older. The second moon rises. The prophecy's second line burned into her mind. The queen shall bleed without a blade. Above them, the bells abruptly stopped. Total silence swallowed the palace. Theron's face drained of color. They're accelerating it. Accelerating what? The public fracture. Aurelia sprinted back toward the surface. When she emerged into the throne hall, she saw it. Half the royal guard had switched uniforms. Black armbands bearing Vera's sigil. The other half stood opposite them. Weapons drawn. Now Kyle stood in the center. And Lyra stood beside him. Alive. Aurelia's breath left her lungs. No. Lyra's wound was gone. Her eyes were different, colder, sharper. You mourned beautifully, Lyra said calmly. The world tilted. You were dead. I needed you to believe that. The council stepped forward from the shadows. She was ours long before you, the high speaker said. Lyra inclined her head slightly. I told you once, Aurelia. Everyone serves something. The betrayal hit harder than any magic. You fed me information, Aurelia whispered. About the council, about the unrest. Yes. To manipulate me. To prepare you. For what? For the truth. Kyle looked between them, stunned. You're with them, he asked Lyra. Lyra's gaze flicked to him. I am with Balance. You let her think I killed you, Kale snapped. And you let her fall in love, knowing you were the key to her chains, Lyra shot back. The air crackled. Aurelia's pulse thundered in her ears. You were the mole, she said softly. Lyra smiled faintly. There is no mole, only perspective. Then she turned to Aurelia fully. You want the second twist? The chamber darkened. Your father did not break the covenant alone. Aurelia's stomach dropped. What do you mean? Lyra's voice lowered. Your mother agreed to delay it. She was the one who refused binding first. The projection from the undercroft flashed in Aurelia's mind. Her mother's journal entry. If the mark ever appears on her skin, it will not mean she betrayed us. It will mean we failed her. She didn't die from council pressure, Lyra continued. She died because the Covenant attempted to transfer prematurely. The mark on Aurelia's arm flared violently. She activated it? Aurelia whispered. Yes? And now it seeks completion through you. The prophecy had never been about betrayal. It was about inheritance. Not of a throne, of unfinished magic. Lyra stepped closer. You are not being punished for doubt, Aurelia. You are being summoned. To what? Lyra's eyes gleamed. To finish what your mother started. Aurelia's breath caught. And what did she start? Lyra's smile faded. Ending the Covenant. The chamber erupted in noise as the two factions of guards clashed. Kale grabbed Aurelia's arm. If she's telling the truth. She is, Aurelia said, because deep inside, something ancient was awakening. Not submission, not fear, but defiance. The second major twist settled like thunder. Her mother had tried to destroy the Covenant. Her father had tried to delay it. The council had tried to enforce it. And Lyra had infiltrated her life not to betray her, but to push her toward rebellion. But rebellion against magic itself? That would fracture the realm. And as the second moon began rising beyond the shattered stained glass, Aurelia realized something terrifying. If she chose to end the Covenant, the kingdom might survive, but magic would not. And the world was not ready for a kingdom without magic. The war had just shifted. Not crown versus council, not love versus duty, but power versus existence itself. By morning, the kingdom was no longer divided in whispers. It was divided in banners. Black sigils of Vera hung from merchant balconies, so royal crests were torn down and burned in public squares. Pamphlets appeared overnight, scattered like fallen leaves. The marked queen will unmake magic. Protect the Covenant or watch the realm fall. The taverns roared with argument. I heard she summoned the mark herself. No, the council forced it. My cousin works in the palace. Says Lady Lyra came back from the dead. Dead women don't walk. Neither do honest councils. Owl spilled. Fists flew. Friendships fractured. The kingdom was no longer watching from a distance. It was choosing. Inside the palace, the court had become a battlefield without swords. Scrolls arrived by the hour. Some sealed with noble insignias, pledging loyalty to Aurelia if she vowed to preserve magic. Others carried veiled threats. Should your highness seek to dismantle the Covenant, House Damar withdraws military support. The Guild of Arcanists cannot guarantee safety should destabilization occur. And one scroll, unsigned, written in trembling ink. If you end the Covenant, my daughter loses her healing gift. Please don't take her light away. Aurelia held that one longer than the rest, because this was no longer theory. Ending the Covenant meant shattering the source web that distributed magic across the realm. Healers, enchanters, crop blessers, stormcallers, all of it tied to Vera, all of it chained to the throne. In a candlelit strategy chamber, tension thickened the air. Kale stood opposite Aurelia at the long oak table. Between them lay maps, relic diagrams, ancient texts. Lyra remained by the window, half in shadow. You can't just destroy it, Kale said. There has to be a controlled severance. Controlled? Aurelia shot back. They've controlled us for centuries. And you'll control what replaces it? He challenged. Her silence answered him. Lyra finally spoke, calm as ever. The public thinks this is about loyalty, she said. It's not. It's about fear. Fear of what? Aurelia asked. Fear of losing what makes them powerful. Outside the chamber doors, nobles argued loudly. Some demanded immediate binding to stabilize the mark. Others whispered that perhaps Queen Seraphine had been right all along. The clergy were split. The arcanists were panicking. And the people? They were terrified. That evening, Aurelia did something unprecedented. She walked alone into the lower city. No escort, no armor, no crown. Just the mark glowing faintly beneath her sleeve. The market square fell silent when she appeared. A woman stepped forward first. A baker Aurelia recognized. "My son can light fires with his hands," the woman said, voice shaking. "If magic breaks, what happens to him?" Aurelia swallowed. "I don't know yet." A murmur rippled. Honesty was not what rulers usually offered. An older man shouted, "My wife survived plague because of Varen healing. You'd gamble that?" Another voice rose from the crowd. "And what about the council's gambles? How many died in quiet to preserve their balance?" Arguments ignited instantly. Aurelia raised her voice. "I will not make a decision in darkness." The mark pulsed faintly. "I will call an open assembly at first light. Council, nobles, arcanists, citizens. The truth will be spoken publicly." Gasps followed. The council never operated publicly. That was the first crack in their authority. Back in the palace, the reaction was swift. A black-robed messenger arrived within the hour. "The High Speaker advises against this spectacle," the messenger intoned. Lyra smirked faintly. "They're afraid." "They are concerned about panic." "They are concerned about exposure," Lyra corrected. Kale paced again, agitation sharp. "You're forcing them into the open," he said to Aurelia. "That's dangerous." "So is silence." He stopped in front of her. "And what about us?" The question hung heavier than politics. "What about us?" she echoed quietly. "If you destroy the Covenant, the Varen line loses legitimacy. You lose power." "I lose purpose," he corrected. The vulnerability in his voice cut through her armor. "And if I complete the bond?" she asked. "Then we rule together," he said. "And the council remains?" "Yes." "And Lyra?" Lyra didn't look away. "I serve the end of the Covenant," she said, "not the preservation of it." "Even if it costs magic?" Kale asked her. Lyra's expression faltered for the first time. "It will cost something," she admitted. The emotional fault lines were splitting open. Love versus legacy. Freedom versus stability. Truth versus survival. That night, Aurelia returned to her chambers. The shattered mirror had been replaced, but as she approached it, her reflection flickered again. This time, it did move differently. It leaned closer than she did and whispered, "You cannot end what you are." Her breath caught. "What does that mean?" The reflection smiled slowly. "The Covenant is not only binding you," Aurelia's heart thudded violently. "It is anchored in your blood." The mark burned like fire. Outside, thunder rolled across the capital. And in the council chambers across the city, the High Speaker removed their mask for the first time in decades. Beneath it was not an ancient stranger. It was someone Aurelia would recognize instantly. The assembly at dawn would not just expose the Covenant. It would expose a face from her past. And when that face stepped into the light, the emotional fallout would become personal. Because the next revelation would not fracture the kingdom. It would fracture her heart. Dawn did not arrive gently. It tore across the sky in streaks of violent crimson, as if the horizon itself had been cut open. The great assembly convened in the central plaza. Nobles in silk, arcanists in layered sigil robes, merchants, soldiers, farmers. Thousands gathered beneath the rising second moon, still faintly visible in the pale sky. At the center stood a circular platform of white stone. On one side, Aurelia. Behind her, Kael and Lyra. Opposite them, the Council of Vera. For the first time in history, the council stood unmasked before the public. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the High Speaker stepped forward and removed their hood. Silver hair fell over familiar shoulders. Aurelia's breath left her body. Impossible. It was General Cassian Vale, her godfather, the man who taught her how to hold a sword, the man who carried her when her mother died, the man who swore loyalty to her bloodline before the entire court. The plaza erupted in confusion. "You?" Aurelia whispered. Cassian's eyes were not cruel. They were tired. "I told you once," he said gently. That power must be guided, not inherited blindly. You were Vera? She demanded. I was recruited after your father refused the binding. The council needed someone close to the crown, someone who loved you enough to do what was necessary. Her vision blurred. You let my mother die. His jaw tightened. I tried to stop the transfer. It destabilized too quickly. She trusted you. So did you. The betrayal sliced deeper than Lyra's deception. Because this one was love, and love had chosen control. Aurelia's mark flared violently as the plaza trembled. Cassian raised his hand. The covenant cannot be destroyed, he declared publicly. It is not a contract, it is an anchor. Magic flows through the royal bloodline. Through you! Murmurs spread like wildfire. What does that mean? Someone shouted. Cassian didn't break eye contact with Aurelia. It means if she severs it, magic dies with her. The world stopped. Kale stepped forward sharply. That's not what the archives say. The archives are incomplete, Cassian replied. Lyra's composure finally cracked. You're lying. I am preserving the realm. Aurelia felt something inside her unravel. The mirror said it, she whispered. The covenant is anchored in my blood. Cassian nodded slowly. Queen Seraphine discovered it too late. The ritual generations ago fused Vera's source with royal marrow. Every heir since has been both monarch and conduit. The crowd's panic turned primal. If she ends it, there will be no more healers. No more storm callers. No more protection. Aurelia staggered back. So my entire life, I wasn't just heir to a throne. No, Cassian said softly. You were heir to magic itself. The second moon brightened unnaturally overhead. The mark on her arm spread higher, racing toward her shoulder. Kale grabbed her hand. We can still bind, stabilize it. And remain their anchor? She shot back. Remain alive, he snapped. Lyra stepped forward. He's right about one thing. If you rupture the covenant abruptly, you die. Aurelia laughed, hollow, breathless. So those are my choices? She raised her voice for the entire kingdom to hear. Bind myself to shadow and remain a puppet conduit, or free us all and let magic burn with me. Silence. Terrible, suffocating silence. Cassian's voice softened. You were never meant to choose. The air above the platform began to crack like splintering glass. A glowing sigil expanded beneath Aurelia's feet. The covenant was activating. Not because she chose, but because the second moon had reached its peak. Kale's grip tightened desperately. If you step off the sigil, it completes automatically. And if I stay, she demanded. Lyra met her eyes. If you stay, you can redirect it. To where? Lyra's answer was barely a whisper. To someone else. The realization hit like lightning. The covenant required royal blood, not necessarily hers. Cassian saw it too late. Aurelia, don't. But she was already moving. She turned. Not toward Kyle. Not toward the council. Toward the royal balcony overlooking the plaza, where King Theron stood watching, her father. The one who delayed. The one who gambled. The one who knew. Father, she called. His face drained of color as understanding dawned. You are still king, she said. And the covenant binds the reigning monarch first. The crowd gasped as the sigil beneath her shifted direction. Magic lashed outward, threads of black and silver racing toward the balcony. Theron shouted, Too late. The covenant snapped into him like a hooked chain. The sky split with blinding light. Aurelia collapsed to her knees as the mark receded from her skin. But above, the second moon cracked. Magic screamed. Cassian stared upward in horror. You've unbalanced it, Kale whispered, shaken. What did you do? Aurelia looked at her hands, now unmarked. I redirected the anchor. A thunderous fracture echoed across the realm. In distant villages, lanterns flickered out. Storms halted mid-roar. Healers felt their power surge, then distort. Because the covenant had not stabilized. It had transferred. And King Theron was not prepared to contain it. High above the capital, something ancient stirred in the fracture between moons. Not dying. Not fading. Awakening. Aurelia looked up at the widening crack in the sky, and for the first time, she realized the covenant had never been the cage. It had been the lock, and she had just broken it. If you're still here, take a breath. Because what you just witnessed wasn't just betrayal. It wasn't just political manipulation. It wasn't just love twisted into leverage. It wasn't just a kingdom split in half. It was a queen who discovered she wasn't born to rule a throne. She was born to hold the entire source of magic together. And she just shattered it. Now I need you to think, if you were Aurelia, what would you have done? Would you have bound yourself to a system that used your love as a weapon? Would you have sacrificed your father to free yourself? Would you destroy magic to end control, even if the innocent suffer? And here's the real question. Was the covenant evil, or was it protecting the world from something worse? Because that crack in the second moon, that wasn't magic dying. That was something waking up. So tell me in the comments, was Aurelia right to redirect the anchor? Is Kale still trustworthy? Is Lyra truly an ally, or playing a longer game? And what do you think is coming through that fracture in the sky? Drop your theories below. I'm reading everything. If you want part 2, where we uncover what's inside the broken moon, what happens to King Theron, and whether Aurelia's sacrifice actually saved the realm or doomed it, make sure you're ready, because the war hasn't started. It's just changed shape. And next time, the enemy won't be human.